one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. Our first item on the agenda is citizen concerns.
You're a citizen out there.
I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Can we go ahead and approve? Or should we wait?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
He's not here, so.
That's true. Next item on the agenda is approval of prior month's minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
And I see no objection from anybody else. Pass it. It's passed. We'll send it, whatever. Council thinks.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Third item on the agenda is the Fall Street and subdivision contract tree planting.
So here we are again for our trees for 2021. You will see that we are looking to plant 211 trees. The majority of those trees are paid for by the planners of new developments, 170 of them. 41 trees are replacement trees for trees that have died or been damaged that we have already taken down and need to replace. We did ultimately get two quotes for this as of yesterday, but the second quote that came in was twice as high as the first quote that came in. So we are still going with the North Branch Nursery quote. The second quote was for $158,250 for the same number of trees.
Who was the company?
Underwood Nursery?
Just kind of curious.
Oh, I don't know.
And I will tell you that every year, the service department reaches out to 4 or 5 different nurseries, and it's like pulling teeth to get people to quote us prices for these trees. And consistently, North Branch is well below everybody else and the only ones who respond. So this is a pretty consistent problem that we have, although North Branch seems to give us a fair price for these trees. Any other questions?
So I do have a question. It's more on identifying the trees that have died and need to be removed. And if you go around, you can see that there are some that are definitely they're just probably ill or have some sort of disease that is part of the tree is dying, the other part's still alive. I know we've talked about an arborist in the past. Is that still something that's being contracted out, or is that?
That's funny you say that.
Yes.
It's not being contracted out, but we do have people internally who have all the qualifications or many of the qualifications. So they do from time to time go around and check on trees. If they themselves are unsure about the safety of a tree based on the condition, they'll then call in one of the street tree members who actually is an arborist and get their opinion. And then if it does need to be removed, depending on the size, we'll remove it ourselves or we'll contract it out depending on the circumference, the height, the location, if there's power lines near it. But in terms of an arborist itself, I was just relaying to Councilman Weber back there that I made a slight snafu last night at the Personnel Committee. So Public Service has in their budget about $14,000 additional dollars under salary. In the event that somebody who is currently on staff retires, they want to add those dollars to that position and then create an arborist position and not fill whatever position is retired, whether it be a light equipment operator, heavy equipment operator, litter control coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. But they're still looking at that notion and that concept, and they've been talking to some of our neighboring jurisdictions about that.
I know Maumee has one, actually know the guy who does it over there. And
And so is, I think, Bowling Green.
Yeah, and we're a tree city. It'd be great to have someone on staff that can actually
So
manage the
we have
trees.
certified individuals that can prune. Greg Core is very knowledgeable about trees and tree diseases. But if something seems to be out of his bailiwick, he will call in one of the street tree commission members who is an arborist.
Okay.
For
It'd
that
be-
final confirmation.
I just know that when you go around, especially, I'm not running for election this year, but a couple years ago, as I was running for election, you would see that. But when I go out and run through town, you'll see some trees that definitely look like that they need some help. If
And
we have
there
some
are
of the-
always new diseases that come out attacking certain species of trees, so that could be some of it. But this year, we've actually aggressively looked at tree removals versus tree plantings with the funds that are coming from the general fund and from the assessment. And we're looking to do the same thing next year, is focus on those trees that could be far enough along in a disease that they're unable to be saved or are unsafe. So we want to aggressively look at those before planting new trees. We want to take care of the old stock.
That was one of my other questions. When we take out those old ones, do we note what type of tree they are to see if?
Yes, that's in our tree tracker program. Yes.
More issues with a certain type and take it off the list and not replace it anymore?
And we don't always replace a tree that we do remove. Sometimes it depends on the homeowner. Sometimes the homeowner wants one, sometimes they don't. And sometimes the location was not ideal to begin with, and so we don't want to put another tree back there that's not going to survive or have a good chance of survival.
Are we going to be putting trees in around 25, down 25 with the new road we're doing, as well as I believe we're doing a multi-use path down 25 as well?
This allotment of trees is, the majority is subdivision, as Kate mentioned, and there are some replacements, but none of those I think are on 25. But as we design that multi-use path down 25, we'll be able to understand if we have the spacing within the right of way to actually install trees. Because sometimes down 25, you may recall, there are some newer buildings that are on 25 that are in our corridor. They paid for street trees, they were scheduled for street trees, but when they went out to actually physically look at the location, there was either a swale there, a sidewalk, a power line, and it just didn't give enough room for a street tree approved species to thrive. So some places actually don't have street trees and probably will never have street trees. That's what we have.
Did we refund them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When you mentioned they paid it, I wanted to double check on that.
Yes.
The other concern with any uncurbed street, having them planting them in the treescape area, is potential hazard that could be caused by being hit. I know that's,
And there's also the concern about runoff from salt, depending on how close that street tree is to the uncurved road.
some are much more acceptable, much more, not acceptable, tolerant than others. But there's also, like if you put gypsum in the hole before you plant it, it'll protect it to a certain extent.
There was some place, and I'm going around the map in the city, and I can't remember where it was, where I thought it would be there was just this big area that was missing trees. I thought it would be great. If I remember, I'll reach out and let you know.
Yeah, just email.
No, 25 is a good area.
25 would be great, but there was somewhere else that I remember seeing some designs. I don't remember where it was.
Designs or email?
I think it was designs or through some email. I don't remember what it was. And I mentioned, every time I say I'm going to bring something up during the meeting, half the time I remember, the other half to reach out to you the next day and say, oh, this is, yes.
Anything else? I think I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. You're the chairwoman here, so. I don't have anything else, but I'm good with moving forward with this. I think it's important to have.
Good.
Thank you for the verbal. Okay, and then we'll send it out to council with our recommendations. My favorite thing, the budget.
I apologize, Rob was unable to come, so I had to pinch hit. He has a pretty straightforward budget this year.
I appreciate the printouts. I was trying to get no one to repeat it, though.
So, and I segregated out the budgets that all fall under Rob. So I took out the parks, the recreation pool pond, and those will go to recreation at their next meeting. So we have our generic, general public buildings and lands. So if you turn to the detailed spreadsheet, if you're not already there, obviously the large item is $450,000 for what's called repairs and maintenance. This comprises 4 items. Wait a minute, that should be more than 4 items, but let me figure that out. There's Rivercrest Ball Field renovation, that's an ongoing project. It's been a while since we've paid attention to like the lip in the outfield, overseeding, the pitcher's mound, so we've been making an effort this year to go through and do some attention to those fields. So this will be kind of like an ongoing project for the next couple of years to make sure those fields are up to grade. We're also looking at replacing the partitions in the restrooms at Rivercrest and Municipal Park. We have pond erosion, this is at 3 Meadows. This is the last 2/3 of doing the erosion control. This then will allow us to contemplate about putting a multi-use path around the pond once it is completed. I know we've had some people from PrAC mention that recently. And then there's also the desire to run a 2-inch water line to where the brine tanks are, because currently we're trying to fill the tanks using like a 3/4 inch line, and it's just taking a lot of time. So that's work that could possibly be done in-house with public utilities, so that's kind of a placeholder. And then there are a couple other items, and for some reason it's escaping me what they are, but let me get back to you on the remainder of that $450,000, because I think those are on the capital side of the line, so let me follow back up with you on that.
While you're following up on that, I know you're talking a little bit about some of the parks. One of the conversations, I know that there's a grant application that we approved at the last council meeting and through RAC. I really believe it is in the best interest of this community to have a kayak launch down there at Hood Park, regardless if we get the grant or not. And I want to communicate that as we're going through the budget, that I think that is something that we should be looking to add in there with a plan to move forward with it regardless.
Duly noted. I will make a note of that.
HVAC units,
Oh, pardon me?
is it to replace HVAC units?
I don't believe it. Ooh, I'm looking here.
No, never mind.
No, it wasn't, and I'm totally perplexed because that doesn't add up and
I think it's whatever else comes up.
just, oh, okay, a generic placeholder in case there is a building issue. I will verify that though and email back to the committee. Because on the capital side in the 403 fund, there are some items, equipment items that are in here as well as building items, but those would not come out of the 1047. In the future, once we get our new financial software, yay, we probably will not have as many different accounts under the Department of Public Service. It'll probably be more blended and melded together, except for those items that are special revenue funds, such as refuse. That would be our goal. That way we don't have to page back and forth between multiple budgets to figure out where this building repairs and maintenance items are going versus the one over in another budget. And then there's some materials and supplies, and again, those are mainly placeholders in case something happens, as well as we have our real estate taxes. That is something that is a number that's given out by the finance department to department heads. And I think that's also something that Amber is looking into to take a look at that to more fairly, equitably allocate those funds across all the appropriate departments. Something that hasn't been looked at in a while. Then the other large budget, the first large budget, is actually the street division. And I think if you've been in other committee meetings, you've probably heard Amber spiel about we're starting the process of rolling up all the various salary line items. Some departments had as many as 15 different line items for salary. So we're starting that process, since we're going to be starting on our new financial software system, of rolling them all up for almost every department except for police and fire, essentially, I believe, into one account. And the new software is going to allow us to, at a touch of a button, spit out reports that have like every name, position, salary that make up these numbers. It'll be so much easier on everybody. It'll be fantastic. But we just have to start the process of consolidating those line items for our own mental health over here. But basically, their employees includes those that are assigned to streets, as well as portions of the director, the deputy director, and the superintendent. Those are kind of spread across multiple accounts, since they are overseeing all those accounts. But the significant piece in here is a collective bargaining agreement. So in there is the increase for 2021 of 2%, and the collectively bargained increase for 2022, which was 2.5%. The other item that is in that number is if anybody, and we do a fairly new crew out there in some respects, those people are still on their steps, so those steps are also factored into the salary figure. And then moving on, there is one item on this detail sheet under repairs by contract. You'll see for $15,000. That actually is an error on this page, on the detail page, but the summary page is correct. Because if you look down just a couple lines, you'll see the same item, equipment rentals for $15,000. So I discussed it with Rob Ross today, and he verified that yes, the summary is correct. The budget numbers that Amber has is correct. He neglected to remove it from the detail sheet.
So if I'm looking at 50245, the inspector, because that's rather large number that's getting grouped into salary or employees, I would assume, right?
Yes.
Is that money we spent contracting out?
No, they aren't actually inspectors.
Okay.
That's the funny thing. These
Okay.
don't make any sense. Another reason. So that is actually the city's electrician and building maintenance technician. They're
Okay.
collectively bargained positions. They're pay grade 14 on their wage scale. So they're at the higher end of the collective bargaining wage scale.
Okay.
So those two positions are, I don't know why we use the word inspector.
Yeah.
Don't know, but they're appropriately categorized, or will be appropriately categorized in the new software. And the same with the clerk hire. Don't know why it's named that, but that's essentially the full-time admin assistant that's in the union, which is Darlene. And then Debbie Ivan is a part-time non-bargaining unit employee that works 30 hours a week. And then you see down below, you'll see supervision Ron. That's actually Ron Isaacson. He's our deputy director. So a portion of his salary, it goes to the streets account as it does to parks and perhaps refuse. And then deputy director / com, which is actually the director, is Rob Ross. So again, his salary got rolled up into that same line item.
Okay.
Which is slightly confusing when the titles don't match the.
Yeah, that's, I'm looking at inspector singular and
Yeah.
wondering who
And
we're
you see
paying
two.
out. Yeah.
And it's like, is this the inspector like the construction inspector?
I know.
Yeah, well, I didn't know if that's why we're leaning towards
I
like
would-
safety inspector stuff.
Yeah, so
Just
this is
wanted
actually the
clarification.
electrician and the building maintenance technician.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, that makes sense why it's called inspector.
Yes,
I applied to
exactly.
the city a long time ago if I would have known it was 160,000. I had that check, thank you for asking.
And then we have insurance, which is the portion of liability insurance that's being attributed to this department. And then under this building maintenance and repair, there's $15,000 for janitorial supplies, $15,000 for equipment rentals. And those equipment rentals are pieces of equipment that we don't currently have. Sometimes if they're doing some concrete work, they need to rent some cutting tools. Sometimes they're doing some overhead work and they'll need to rent a JLG, like a scissor lift.
Oh, yeah,
Am I getting it
we
right?
just called it lifts.
Yeah, there's like a, yeah, it's JLG, that's a JLG.
Do we have people in the street division that work on these vehicles?
There's a line item for mechanics, and the mechanics are portioned out between public service, which handles all the general fund. The portion for the mechanics costs that are attributable to general fund vehicles comes out of this budget. And then police and fire also have a piece, as well as utilities. They all contribute towards the cost of the three mechanics.
Where's the mechanics line?
The Chuck, Matt, and Nick, it says on there.
Yeah, if you go up to vehicle maintenance labor, their portion of the three mechanics are up in
towards the back.
salaries. And then if you're on the utilities committee, For the two utilities budgets, operational budgets, you'll see the same line item. For that, that's their attributable cost based on the number of vehicles that are being serviced by them. And police and fire have the same line item. And then there's like some HVAC contracts, so that in case we have breakdowns that are not covered by our PM contract, then we have the dollars then to go ahead and fix those. Same with, we have annual elevator inspections, and if we need to replace light bulbs, make any modifications there due to the inspection, we have dollars available. And then every year we get the waste burner serviced, and that's the heat source out in the base, out at Roachton Road. So we dump our waste oil into there to heat up that space.
Which is a win-win, because we're not paying somebody
To
to haul it
dispose
away.
of that, yes.
And we're not paying, it's less we pay out for electric.
And then speaking of utilities, you can see the estimated cost for the utilities. Same with communication services. There's a radio purchase maintenance, and that's just an annual maintenance agreement for the radios that they use out in the field. Again, there's some supplies. Some of these supplies are used just at service. Some of the supplies they distribute to other buildings. And that's one of the things that we need to work on in the future, is bringing some of those items that are all like items under one budget to better manage it. You know, go out to bid, utilize one vendor, instead of having every building kind of do their own thing. I think there's opportunities there, so he did that work with the financial system, but the financial system is gonna let us really see that collectively to then know what next steps we can take. Same with paper and paper
As we
products.
say, I see benefits and downfalls with that, is that you may see someone who, from one of the buildings, say that we're not getting enough stuff if it's not being divvied out appropriately, and I'd be concerned if
Correct.
it's going through one
bidding.
bidding.
It's like a quartermaster system. But
Yeah,
it's interesting, because some of the buildings now get their supplies from service, and others go out on their own to get the supplies.
okay.
And sometimes we're going to California to get supplies, don't know why. Sometimes we're by local, sometimes we're getting them online, sometimes we're going to the store. So I think being able to see a holistic picture gives us the idea of what options are available to us.
Buying in bulk can be cheaper,
It-
not always, but.
It can, especially if you're bidding.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we
one
all
of the
like-
questions that I'll ask real quick as well is if we're going
Sure.
through that process to consolidate in these different departments to do one thing now, not just cleaning supplies, but equipment rentals or anything like that.
Office supplies.
One of the concerns I have, and I'm just gonna ask is this gonna lead to another position that would need to be hired within the city in order to
That I
maintain
do
the
not
manager?
know. I mean, many organizations have, in their finance department, have, I'll call it a purchasing agent. And they're the ones that are actually getting requests from departments and putting together a bid, or either a formal bid or for quotes on a variety of products that are commodities. So it all depends. I mean, our plan here would be to figure out what we can do and start small and get the low-hanging fruit.
Okay. I just,
You know, like copy paper. That's
my
a-
concern
that's
is that
pretty
the
easy to come
savings
out.
will be offset by another position. And that's what I wanted to have that conversation
I
focused
mean, the
on.
intent isn't to add positions, so,
I know the intent's not there, but
Right.
at some point you're gonna get to a point where someone says, I'm too busy to
or
manage
with a
it.
financial system that frees up time of employees that we already have, because things
That's-
aren't needing to be inputted or data entered,
Yeah.
that could free up an individual to spend some time to do some of these activities.
The ones, that's what they do for each district. When they buy it at the district, you send your requests in, and it's administrative assistant from one of the engineers or something like that, and they use that.
So it's an opportunity that we want to be able to explore, but right now, people
But there is,
aren't using the same line items for the same purposes, and that's one of the things that Amber is going to be working diligently on as we go forward with the new software system, is creating a whole new general ledger of accounts, a chart of accounts, and having everybody, to the best of everybody's ability, use the same line item for the same purposes.
I can see it being beneficial with stationary items.
I can see that there's some benefit there. I'm just concerned if this is it gonna free up enough time that someone can handle it, or is it going to end up growing itself in another position where we end up?
The intent is not to grow it into another position, but I think there will be time available within the department as a new financial system comes online, that to pick a couple items that are paper,
And
paper towel,
you send out quarterly?
cleaning solutions, some of those things that are pretty easily used across all the departments, and just start there and see what happens.
And then a follow-up question that I'm going to ask, and this is just something that is just more unique type of a question, but when we're purchasing these supplies, whether it's cleaning supplies, office supplies, stationery supplies, I know we're potentially going out to bid, or we're going online to buy it. Are we looking to make sure that the products are either locally produced or made in America?
There is currently no requirement, either in our codified ordinances or our administrative policies for that, but that's something that actually Amber and I grabbed a purchasing policy from another jurisdiction. We're looking at that, to look at the way they outline everything. And the place I came from, Lucas County, there was, in certain instances when we were bidding out, whether it be paper, office supplies, they would get extra points if they were local or within so many miles of the jurisdiction of our offices. I mean, so there's a whole variety of things that you can add into any particular bid.
I just have, with the issues that we experienced in this last year, I know this is not necessarily a office supply issue, but when you're talking about cleaning supply and paper products, during the pandemic, you couldn't get a lot of the stuff because a lot of it was purchased overseas. And that's something that just has me concerned moving forward about the supply chain issue of that, and if there's a way to purchase something that is made locally in the
We actually
States.
tried to get cleaning supplies from the company that makes them in Maumee, and we couldn't get those supplies.
Because it was hard to get anything right.
Well, we could get them from other locations within Bowling Green and Toledo. It was just the strangest thing, is like they committed their entire stream to certain groups of people. And we actually had purchase orders in with them at one point that we finally canceled because the product just couldn't get delivered.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we don't have to experience that kind of.
I'm hoping we don't either, but I saw yesterday at Costco that they had a limit on toilet paper and paper towels and tissues to one, and that they were already out of items again.
I feel like that is an artificially created situation.
I don't disagree with you with that, especially since a lot of the trees for that is being taken out of Canada.
Yeah.
And then also under other expense, I'm sorry, I skipped something here. So we have bathroom supplies for the public restrooms that we have at the parks and over at 2nd Street. Barricades and cones when we rent them for 4th of July. We have some miscellaneous there. And then down in materials, it kind of spells out pretty clearly what those materials are, what we're going to use them for. Under other expense, road repairs, and I confirm this, so road repairs is traffic paint, delineators, if we need some curb repair supplies for something that we're gonna do ourselves versus contracting out, or if it's not part of the resurfacing project. We have safety equipment, and that's anything from hiring a firm to set up a safety zone if we're doing some special project that we're not familiar with how to appropriately block off the road. We have dollars there for that. Safety vests, hats, gloves, etc. Safety training, we have there for their portion. Fuel, vehicle maintenance.
You might, okay, I'm trying to think how to put this. Fuel costs affect service committee in ways you guys have no ideas. From the operation of the equipment to the materials used to repair the roads. And I'm hoping, because of the way the prices have been, that we have enough set aside.
So our plan is during the amended budget process between now and then is to evaluate that, and if we need to come back through the process to allocate more dollars, not just for service, but for any other department for fuel, such as the police division, we'll do so at that time.
Because I'm looking at your materials and increase 10%, that's just so far. Who knows? Of course, on the backside, if they drop, then we have a little extra money. Every single one of those items takes fuel either as part of the process of making it, on top of what's inside it. So,
Oh, and then we have like a placeholder for tools, implements. We typically don't spend out those dollars, but it's just one of those, we don't know what will happen or what we don't have until we don't have it. a placeholder for furniture and fixtures in case there's office chairs, tables that are over there. EDP purchases, I don't like that when we're going to do the new system. Electronic data processing, slightly dated. That's $2,500, and that's just in case there is a laptop, a Surface Pro that goes down over there at the service division.
Bridget,
yes,
before
sir.
you move on, if we go back to 52268, so other expenses,
Yes,
that safety training line item, is that a line item we expect to be absorbed if we hire a safety coordinator? Okay.
yes. Right now, that is ensuring that the most basic of classes that are required by PERT are covered.
So that will get reallocated into a salary? Okay.
And then you'll see the same, safety training spans across, yeah.
I figured, I just wanted to make sure, because
Yeah,
that kind of
correct.
answers my question, all the other cities.
Yeah, I know you
Yes.
mentioned reallocating the salary. I would assume that the salary of the safety coordinator is already in the
Yes.
budget anyway.
Is in the human resources budget.
The
yes.
7,500 would be an unencumbered.
It's 75,000 is already budgeted.
Yeah, but I'm talking about 75, or the training would be unencumbered then.
Right, yes, yeah.
Correct.
But I just want to.
Or it could go for fuel.
So the number is 75,000 is what we have budgeted for that position.
Yeah.
On the top end.
Yes,
And
you are correct, Councilman.
The other thing I was gonna ask real quick, going back to the maintenance, it looks like we have three
mechanics,
vehicle maintenance,
yes.
Chuck, Matt, and Nick. Are any of them gonna receive, specific training on electric vehicles? Or are
Yes, yes.
they, okay, cause I know we're adding those to the fleet and that's been.
Yeah, they undergo annual training, and they also go out and get additional ASCs if they don't already have them.
Okay,
That is encouraged by Rob and Ron.
I just wanted to make sure we're covering that.
Yeah, we certainly want somebody who can do diagnostics.
Right.
At least at the most basic level, to know if it's something that we can handle in-house or something that we need to go out.
And maybe it's my own ignorance, and you know what they say about assuming that for mechanics, you have to have certain certifications to be hired.
Yes, yeah, we required ASCs. is
And
what-
part of that is continuing ed.
And I used to remember what that terminology was.
ASME.
And then as we're budgeting, one of the things, just while we're on the topic of electric vehicles, I know this is kind of a side or we're getting askew, but I was brought to my attention that our public fill-up for those electric vehicles, or the plug-ins, are very slow in comparison to most. So that might be something to look into. I know it's like, apparently there's quite a difference. I don't own an electric vehicle, but the person I was with owned a Tesla. And they said it would take about 4 hours on the charger that we have inside the 5.
Okay, I'll ask them.
And that other cities are more like, you will literally map out your way and they'll
Correct.
tell you where the most efficient. And he said Perrysburg might be missing the ball because of that.
Okay,
Like he can tell, I wouldn't stop here, I'd skip it over to go to a different town that has a charger that's quicker. Because I know that you want me to stay and get some of my money, but I'm not gonna sit here for 4 hours. I'm gonna go to the one that takes an hour. So I think that's something to look into, as well as we're looking at the electric vehicle fleet for our own use,
Yes.
making sure they're charged quickly.
And I guess with that question, with this fleet that we're going to be looking at purchasing, where is the chargers going to be?
there'll be chargers at various locations. So we're looking at adding one onto the back of the MRE building for the police division, one over at engineering, and then, actually, the one on the MRE would be for both police and planning and zoning. And then the one that we went out at service, and one at the engineering building. That's for starters.
3 electric for planning and zoning, I know.
And then the engineer's budget has a replacement vehicle in it that we're looking at electric vehicle. And Rob Ross is looking at electric. We're exploring the notion for police with those that are detectives. Somebody that's not actually out on the road patrol, or for like a pool car, if you will, for trainings or going to meetings. So we're still exploring that one, but the one for planning and zoning would be on the MRE building.
And what electric vehicles is the city looking at?
Pardon?
The Volts.
I know that we've tasked Brody and the engineer to look at those, because there's several different models. So
Judging by the price and, Brody said volts, I think it was 30,000 per vehicle.
Yeah, so there's Volts, and then we're also looking at one that's a little bit larger than that to hold like survey equipment. And if we're out, well, if it's, you know, I call it silly season, if it's silly season and we're taking signs down that aren't supposed to be up, we want to make sure we have the appropriate vehicle to
So
stick
we're right
those
around
in.
now.
So we are looking at two different types. One that's more of a mid-size versus more of a runabout.
And those are, again, you know, kind of going back on what I was talking about with American versus made vehicles, I guess is probably this. Is what we're looking at. I know what the Chevy would be, but I'm assuming that they're made in America.
Well, it's
American-
really hard to
That's
tell
what I'm
you
saying.
supply
So
chain.
not necessarily so much.
That's
I was
one thing that
gonna
I think
say-
we should really be cognizant of.
I
is
agree,
Try to
but
support our American workers.
I agree 100%, but I can name you a bunch of companies where
Oh, I
they-
know.
So,
That's why I'm asking the question, to make certain that,
You just have to look very carefully, because a lot of them talk about that, not that they're assembled in America versus made in America,
yeah.
parts from America, so you have to look closely at that.
exactly.
And that's what I'm hoping that they're looking closely at as well, not just the cost, but to ensure that it's helping and beneficial to
No,
the
absolutely.
American workers.
And then the rest of this particular street budget, then are the roll-up benefits, all based on formulas, based on the salaries. So then, the next budget, oh, yes, ma'am?
Do we have a, never mind, go ahead. I gotta think how I wanna ask this.
Okay. Uh-oh. Then the next budget is SCM and R. I don't even remember why it's called that.
Street maintenance, and repair, it's through the state, we don't have to do it.
Yeah, these are funds that flow to us from the state, either from license plate or gas tax
For gas tax.
fees. So in here, the big item is 1.2 million. That is a portion of the planned 2022 street resurfacing. And then if you look farther down, you'll see another allocation of like 340,000. That would be to do two more traffic signal upgrades in the city. We currently have two that are underway. I think we're just waiting on, again, some controllers because of supply chain issues.
Is that the one
But this
by
would
the
do
junior
another
high?
two.
Is
Pardon?
that the one by the junior high?
There's one by the junior high and then the one at Elm and Front.
Are we switching to LEDs?
Yes. Yes, in the traffic signals, yes.
They're
So-
energy efficient.
I'm gonna ask, because we're talking about the traffic lights and utilities and the poles, crosswalks, flashers, indicators. Do we have those in the budget?
We do not yet, but that is an amended budget item.
Okay.
The engineer and I are looking at, and we actually want to talk with you, because you mentioned quickly one day, locations, and I did not capture them all. So
I'm
maybe I'll
sure.
send you an email and ask you the question, then you can list them out for Brian.
Tell you one,
What do you got?
remember, River Crest and up behind Fort Max.
Yeah, that would be potentially one, but where we currently have crosswalks, I mean, you got plenty along west-south boundary that have crosswalks that would be great to have, especially around the school time with kids trying to cross the street. You got the one by Mr. Freeze. There's a lot of kids that use that
Yeah.
one. The one right in front of the service department, right where the multi-use path goes across the street, would be another great one to have. There's,
Do we have a lit one from Rivercrest to Rotary?
That's what I just said.
That's what you just
that's
said,
what she was
sorry.
mentioning. And then I believe it would be appropriate to upgrade the one that we currently have in front of the fire station.
We're just pushing that on.
I think that we should have them a little
Headquarters?
What, I'm sorry?
The one at headquarters?
The new one.
Okay.
That is headquarters. I can't never
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
which one's which. I actually think Louisiana, and 7th Street would be another great one. Then another one right there by, Louisiana 5th Street. We have a lot of pedestrian traffic in those areas. It's important to look at those, and,
I think I've captured them all now. I got them.
I'm trying to think of some more, would not run
I
around
felt
town.
like you had mentioned more.
Yeah, I believe I did, but I'll have to go through and look through some
Go for a
maps.
run, it'll
Have
come to
you
you.
thought about visiting the Metro Park?
I do love the metro parks, but I love running around town to to see.
I know,
what's,
it is the best way to see stuff. I do it too.
We wouldn't have had the bridge repaired between Westbrook if I hadn't gone running through there.
I'm just-
Nobody would have known.
I agree 100%. I know what I was gonna ask. Do we have a regularly scheduled, traffic control device where we go out and like, regularly, every 5 years, automatically replace them?
No, and that is what Rob is trying to get us on with these traffic signal updates. So 2 this year, looking for 2 next year. So he has them, he's mapped out, I think we have about 10. So he's looking
Right.
at 2 for the next couple of years and then go back in the cycle if we need to.
So, and how often do we get those timed with traffic flow?
It depends where you're talking about, because some are.
I mean, obviously, probably the main one's gonna be 25.
And that's done pretty much by ODOT.
Yeah,
Okay. I just wanna make sure, like. I
No,
don't-
Anything that's a state route is
Yeah.
typically handled by them with input from us.
So I can
Give you
write
some
them
input.
angrily where to email.
I'll tell you who to send
Okay.
it to. No, and the best way to tell is look at the control box. If it has a big ODOT signal on it, sign on it, you know it's ODOT signal.
I was gonna say that with the new lights we have in 25 and west south boundary, going left, it takes a long time to wait now.
It is,
Where,
I thought I was only gonna be 2 minutes late, I ended up 6 minutes late.
Well,
And I've
remember,
been
when you,
six
when you
lanes
add
on.
dedicated turn lanes, the time has to come from
It's
somewhere.
open?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
and you don't know if
That's
that's a,
fair, but-
if you don't know if that's a loop or a camera one, do you?
I think most of ours are loops.
Because that makes a big difference, because sometimes they have to work out, either way they got.
I just know that when you're trying to rush to get somewhere in the morning and you get stuck by that light before, you could always take a left if there was no traffic coming. Now you can't. You have to wait. It takes a little longer to take a left turn.
But they should be, I think, I remember Doug Gariano saying most of ours are loops versus camera actually.
Which,
And then the traffic lights dash utilities, that's actually our Toledo Edison bills for our traffic signal.
We thought about putting any solar panels up or anything like that.
No, but I do have an interesting thing I can tell you about in a moment.
you know, that's one thing else we should probably put on our, if we could afford it on our traffic lights, is go to a backup plan like ODOT does, but they have solar panels with battery backups. So if they lose electricity at, let's say, Indiana, Louisiana, that kicks in and buys you 12 hours.
Yeah.
But they're kind of expensive.
Depends on the road.
But then you look at how many hours an officer would have to stand there, so.
How many
or
officers
whatever.
we need.
Or people would just have to remember from their days of training of how you navigate a signalized intersection with the signal lights. Who
That's
goes
true,
first?
too.
Well, when you have so many different directions on 25 and Nickel Junction,
I know.
no one's gonna remember.
And then our last item is just street signs, so we always put a placeholder in there because street signs from time to time do come down or do need to be replaced because of weather.
That's the other thing that, do we have a regular scheduled maintenance on that? Because I do know reflectivity on those.
Yes, I believe, when Rick Tepper was here prior to him retiring, that he had the street signs all up to the current retro reflectivity standards, except those specific subdivisions that had those very unique signs, like at Three Meadows, some in the sanctuary that have those more decorative, that we tried to approach homeowners associations at one time, and it was
I remember more cross.
pitchforks from some of those folks.
Indiana and Findlay would be a good one. Findlay and Mulberry would be another good spot. You have a lot of kids that cross over there. And then 65 and right by the fort there. What's the street?
Fort Myers,
No,
Or,
the street right over there.
South Ridge.
South, yes. I think so, but that would be another good spot as well. I do have a question though on those signs. I should have asked this as well. And this might be a legal question. When it comes to those signs and those lights are flashing, is there anything in the Ohio Revised Code that requires someone to stop at those signs?
And when you say signs,
So
What
if,
color are they flashing?
so if someone's flashing, because it most likely be flashing yellow.
If it's yellow, it's, well, so like, if you go to Bowling Green State University,
Yeah.
that's kind of like a good review of what the
Like a-
revised code says about traffic signals. So flashing yellow is a yield, a flashing red is a stop and go, and then a solid red is stop.
Okay.
So you'll see them go through that system whenever someone
I
hits
always
that
just
button,
know
it
that.
flashes
Yeah, I do
yellow.
too.
But I know down in Florida, it's flashing yellow requires you to still stop.
Well, you're supposed to yield to all pedestrians
Yeah.
anyway.
They-
That's just kind of putting
Whether
it
there's
to
a
the,
signal there or not.
so once you see the flashing yellow, it's your cue to slow down and yield to the other.
Because that's what I want to make certain that we look at. And I would love us to have some signs on there that specifically remind everyone, you have to.
Yield.
You have to yield to
Yeah.
pedestrians. That's the revised code.
And-
But
And the ones on, excuse me if I'm wrong, on Front Street have the yield, and with the yield the pedestrian
Yields,
sign.
flashers, all
It's
kinds of
the triangle
adornments
with, and it
that
has a person in
people ignore.
the,
Yeah.
so, I mean,
So realistically, like, it's kind of supposed to approach it the same no matter what. What those things do in PG is make it so I think you can get a traffic violation for going through a solid
And
red.
that's what I want to.
Yeah.
I believe that we should find some way to either make, and if it's something that we have to pass a local ordinance for, I'm okay with trying to do something.
I think you could lean on the revised code because they go through the lighting
Yeah.
systems. That's why when you come to, I don't know if we have lights that turn to blinking lights at 2 o'clock in the morning. Likely we do.
yes,
There are some.
Yeah,
Indiana.
when they're blinking red, stop,
Stop and go.
stop and go.
It's like a stop sign.
Yeah, so like power goes out, we're always gonna.
That's, which is what I thought, there's two, I know from Fonts down here that does that. Louisiana and Indiana, and then, Indiana and out by the park. Was flash after midnight.
On Indiana.
Yeah, and what is it? Indiana, out at, Woodland Park, what is that?
Oh, it's 795?
795 and whatever. Anything else?
Are we doing garbage and refuse?
Yeah, so refuse.
Oh, we are, or is that, I just
that's
assumed
us.
it was,
I have another business item I'm curious about.
I just
So
thought it
we
was-
have refuse.
I forget it's mine.
And there are some capital items that are on that large sheet that I sent you, the 11 by 17. And I can spend time going through those now, or we can go through them next meeting, doesn't matter to me. Or if you randomly have questions, feel free to email me.
We got.
Again, the employees is rolling up all the refuse drivers, as well as portions of Greg Poor's salary, because he is their immediate supervisor. Mechanics, that's also rolled up into there. You'll notice dumping, right now, the tipping fees have stabilized, but we're anticipating that they could go up. So obviously, we're only using those if the tipping fees do go up, and those funds stay within that fund, because it's a special revenue fund. We have fees we have to pay to the county auditor and treasurer, and I believe we get those from Amber. We have dollars in there for delinquent tax collection fees if we have to go that route. Advertising, from time to time, we do some advertising, so that just handles that. Vehicle insurance, radio maintenance, and we talked about this in another budget, that's for the radios that portable radios that they utilize in their vehicles to communicate to each other and back to base. We have supplies, printing, fuel, we're looking at a 30% increase there. And again, we'll just watch that trend for the next couple of months to see if we can reduce and or need to increase that for next year. Small amount of money for travel and conferences if appropriate. Vehicle maintenance, even though our vehicles are relatively new, they are, I think, coming up on their 4th year, perhaps, or 5th year. So they're expecting maybe some additional PMs and some attention with those. And then we have the roll-ups on the next page, and we have disposal of recyclables.
Yeah,
We kind of looked at dropping that a bit because of taking glass out of the mix.
that's, and that was gonna be my question, because we pay quite a lot of money for them taking.
Yes, that probably May, June, I know it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 140 a ton. I haven't asked Rob what it is lately. He indicated it came down a little bit, but we're not sure where that's gonna go.
Is that something we could get a breakdown again? I know at one point we had
Oh,
a
yeah.
breakdown of what gets recycled versus
Yeah,
what
I can see if
gets-
Judy has an updated one, because she's been tracking to the best of our ability the glass that's been,
What's
that
the-
we've been collecting and taking out to OI.
What's the fees to actually take it to the trash
The trash fees were somewhere in the neighborhood, I think, of $35.
per ton, and it's 140 to recycle?
Yeah.
So still definitely,
And then there was like, what was it, 20% effectiveness?
it's something.
Yeah.
What was in recycling actually got recycled, the rest went in.
Yeah, there was a much smaller subset of things
I
that
know we
actually
have the
did
stickers
recycle
on
because
the-
of contamination or the fact that they weren't even.
Because it would be
recycled.
nice to track the effectiveness of taking out glass with the other things we implemented to try to help.
Well, I love the stickers that we
Yeah,
put on.
I do too.
I got told that by my wife that I passively aggressively put them on our own can, just to remind her.
I would like those in my house. I'd put,
and
Well,
that
I'll
was,
ask Judy and Rob if they can update that last spreadsheet that they did for the committee.
and that was my question about the contaminants getting in the recycling. Have we gotten better or not?
I think it'd be great to maybe get quarterly updates on that.
that would be, I think that would be a really good idea.
I
But
agree.
if it's still not working, we still have to make some other changes. And
Well,
whether
the good
we
thing
go
is
back-
we are taking a lot of tonnage out and putting it to OI, so we're not paying tipping fees either way,
Right.
whether it's for trash or recyclables.
Right.
And then the last one I have for you is street tree. It's pretty similar to this year, I believe. And there's always two categories. There's those that are city trees that we either need to replace, remove, or new requests that come in versus those that are subdivision funded. So the first item is 70,000, that's for contracts, and what that is that's tree removals. Again, Councilman Smith, going back to your statement about seeing trees that look a little dicey, this will allow us to keep evaluating those and remove those that we can either in-house or externally through utilizing these funds here. We're looking to upgrade our tree tracker inventory software, so there's dollars in there for that. The plantings of 30,000, that then is the replacement for trees that are either removed that the homeowners asked to be replaced, or new requests that come in from people who, when the subdivision was mapped out, their house wasn't slated for a street tree, but they would like one. And then the large item, the 250,000, those are dollars that the city has on account, if you will, from developers for their street tree fees that have yet to be put in because the subdivision is just not ready for that step. We put dollars in for donation plantings. On occasion, we have somebody who wants to donate funds to have a tree planted in memorial of somebody that they love. And so what we'll do is we'll use these dollars to go out and actually contract with like a North Branch to actually select the tree and then actually plant the tree, because usually it has a bigger root ball than we want to deal with. And then we have some Arbor Day expenses that we put in there for advertising, flyers, programs, et cetera. Educational materials and other expense are placeholders of about $500 each. And that's all we have there.
Thank you very much.
And other business, I know we have a lot of street projects going on, and this is not necessarily ours, but do we have an update on the closure of?
Yes, in fact, I'm typing away at my council update for the week, and
Perfect.
the update is they have no update. I spoke via email with Teresa Pollock, their PIO, this morning, and they are still, their contractor is still trying to replace the subcontractor that declined to do the work.
Okay.
So they're at a standstill.
Do we get any say on the traffic pattern there?
We do not typically, but now that we have a heads up, I know that I think we chimed in about not having any signal boards out there, because we're like, well, this is going to be a nightmare. How do we get the word out? Because we found out last minute. Luckily, it didn't happen when they said it was going to happen. But that route was looked at by the engineer, and he said that is probably the most appropriate route. And typically, like if we are doing a large-scale project like that, and it's ODOT funded, this one's not ODOT funded, but ODOT also chimes in on the traffic pattern for their detours.
Well,
Sometimes we call a company that specializes in that.
it would be great if we could get, and I think I've mentioned this to you, 2 lanes out of Perrysburg in the morning, and then 2
You
lanes
have not
on the
mentioned
way.
that to me.
Oh, do you know how hard that would be?
Our nice, small-me neighbors that are down to 1
Oh.
lane, it'd be nice if their commuters got congested
Yeah.
on their end.
No, you did, yeah, the congestion.
Oh,
I
you're meaning
remember you
at
mentioning that.
25?
Yes, because it's a
Okay.
3-lane and 1 lane's
And
closed.
either way, they have to follow the Ohio Standard Uniform Traffic Control Devices Manual, which dictates how to do traffic control for that.
Yeah, and sometimes
Based
outside
on
of that, there
speed.
are wiggle room
Just a
depending
little
on how many
spiteful.
lanes,
I know.
but yeah, he has a pet peeve over there.
No, I agree
I
with
think there's a
you.
lot of Mulkey residents who aren't really too thrilled with it either, so.
Oh, that's fair.
I
I know we have a lot of Perrysburg residents that are not thrilled.
I really hate it when they, and I know this wasn't your fault or their fault ultimately, that you advertise a closing and put the boards out and everything, and then you go there, you know, you change your route and find out that it's didn't happen.
Yeah, do we have any like email list box that people can send or sign up for like traffic updates? I know me personally, I should have been able to,
Oh,
I
yeah.
could have found that out, but I drove all the way through Waterville
What
that day.
about, we're talking about that phone service?
Code red?
Yeah, something with, yeah, which we need to really wrap it up, because
Yes.
we're going into Barry's,
I was just
We don't
curious.
have I know like ODOT will have like a weekly update that you can sign up for.
It would be
but that's not
cool
something
if-
that we have at the moment.
that code red.
That'd be something down the line. It'd be neat if people could opt into something, because I would probably have opted into something, but I know it's gonna affect my daily commute.
Right.
And I
It's
see it's
important to you.
upcoming, just to get updates on that specific project or, or even a page that we can refer people to that kind of updates where those projects are within city limits.
Yeah,
I'll make a note of that
Like, you
and
mean
talk
the
to
cities?
engineering
Yes.
and the next PIO. And
I
IT.
imagine it'll be a lot easier when we get the PIO in.
Well,
Well,
exactly.
the IT already has the map that shows where.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, just put it so
Where
people
the
can access like
traffic would
a
be.
traffic button on our.
It's not real time in the sense that
Yeah,
it's
no.
happening real time, but there are products that we've been looking at that could be utilized by both utilities and service
Okay.
for a variety of projects that are actually real time. And you can
Not
push
this time.
information out. So we've been chatting with IT and they brought in a couple different vendors on that.
Oh, very cool.
I know
So we
used
are
to-
looking at progressing towards those kind of avenues.
I know we
And
used
that's
to
the
put
IO.
something out in the messenger journal, is that not something, don't
We
recall
still
seeing that
do.
for a while.
Excuse me?
Putting out pending projects in the messenger journal and maps showing that.
That was in there.
Well, that's the thing, like, that was in there.
Yeah, that was
And
in
then I think everyone was anticipating it to start that day, and then it
And
just
then-
didn't happen.
Well, but I thought that we used to have maps showing projects that, this is a unique situation, but are we still putting,
I myself have not ever sent anything to the messenger like that.
It had a section with road repairs in there, but typically it's only that section.
I thought it was years ago that I recall having something in there. They would post some stuff on the.
I mean, we do use the messenger journal for posting for open houses for like projects. But I think we've kind of migrated towards social media and our website. But let me do a little talking with Nathan
Okay.
on that. And the item, I will not mention it for over time.
Okay.
I will email it in my council update.
If we are all finished, then we are adjourned.
All right.
No, I'm good. All right, thanks. I'm gonna take a quick recess before we start.
Public utilities.
Yes.
How are you today, Matt?
Doing well, how are you?
Good.